You've got infrastructure, you've got construction. I think that's been the problem for the last 2 to 3 years, and I think that still continues to be the way it is. While infrastructure and construction are by and large domestic stories, the metals and mining space is by and large what is happening in the global markets. It's an industry which is undergoing a structural change, primarily driven by what's happening in the Chinese markets, where the demand has kind of come off quite significantly as China moves from an investment-driven economy to what we call as a consumption-driven economy. So clearly that's a sector which is operating at fairly low levels of capacity utilization globally, and a lot of that effect is now playing out into the Indian markets as well. Our reading is that that sector is probably going to remain fairly stretched, at least for the next few years. If I go back to the capacity utilization calculations, our rough calculation shows that the metals and mining space probably is operating at about 47% capacity utilization. So I think we're a fair distance away in terms of what actually the capacity utilization there should be. So it's a sector which will remain challenging, although there are certain companies, the higher end companies which are value added product manufacturers, they will continue to do well, but at the mid to smaller kind of levels, you would see a fair amount of stress. The other sector, which is infrastructure and construction, I think while we have seen some improvements in those sectors or in those entities which have actually gone through a restructuring process, I think what we are now seeing is that probably still the cash flows are not necessarily adequate to service the debt obligation. So our belief is that that sector itself per se may also continue to face pressures on the toll road side as well as on the power side. But some of the issues which are getting addressed through the government initiatives may provide some kind of a cushion as we go along, especially in terms of addressing the scope of project issues or addressing the repayment obligation issues, especially through the 5x25 scheme. So that may provide some viability to these projects, but per se at this moment it looks like yes, there is a challenge in continuing in these two sectors. The ones which are export oriented, especially sectors like pharmaceutical, IT, textile, especially at the larger end or the large corporates who are continuing to perform well, whereas as you go down the credit curve, even in the textile space, you have a fair amount of stress that's kind of building up. So those sectors continue to do well. The other ones which are doing probably well are auto ancillaries, where they've kind of benefited on account of commodity price movements. So they've been able to absorb some of the cash flows in relation to the debt that they have. So you've got the tire companies which have actually done phenomenally well in the last couple of years, 2 to 3 years, and expected to do as well in the foreseeable future. So I think yes, you've got a mixed bag. You have stressed corporates, but yes, stressed sectors. You also got certain sectors which are doing well. And would continue to believe that corporates who have low levels of leverage would continue to be the drivers of credit quality improvement as we go along.